everyone. Welcome to the 5th episode of web series Decoding NEP 2020, brought to you by Edudevs, School of Inspired Teaching and Learning, in association with Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham University. Teaching has always been an inimitable profession, not just an occupation, but an engagement with the students. The National Education Policy 2020 reiterates the importance of teachers and aspires for outstanding students to choose the teaching profession. We have a responsibility to set a high bar for every teacher. Considering the range of responsibilities, an educationist is required to ingrain within her character the essence of both an educator and a mentor, to be able to build a sound educational edifice and personality of students. Our panelists for today's discussion are illustrious luminaries from the field of education. I welcome our first panelist, Professor Geeta Gandhi Kingdon, who's a professor at the Institute of Education, University College London, where she holds the chair of Education Economics and International Development. Prior to this, she was a research fellow for 11 years at the Department of Economics, University of Oxford. She has a BSc Honours in Economics from the London School of Economics and an MSc and Doctor of Philosophy in Development Economics from the University of Oxford. Her research on economics of education is based mostly on statistical analysis of education data sets. Based on this research, she advises governments and donor agencies such as the World Bank, the European Union, and the UK government's Department for International Development. In India, she has been a member of the MHRD's Joint Review Missions of Public Education Programs, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan and the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, and is a member of the Uttar Pradesh Secondary Education Board. In 2013, Professor Kingdon received an honorary doctorate from Kingston University, London. Professor Kingdon is also President and Managing Director of the Board of City Montessori School, Lucknow, which has 57,000 students and is entered in the Guinness Book of Records as the largest city school in the world. We are privileged to have you amidst us, Dr. Kingdon. Our second panelist, Dr. P Shankar, is presently principal at Amrita School of Engineering, Chennai campus of Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. He is a prolific researcher cum teacher with national and international credentials. He has served as Senior Scientific Officer at the Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research for 19 years, before shifting to a full-time position in educational institutions since 2008. He has served as adjunct visiting faculty at University of Arkansas during 2012 to 2016. His passion for education and to motivate students has been the driving force for him to take up full-time responsibility as academic administrator, giving up a coveted post at Atomic Energy. In the last 12 years, he has been instrumental in introducing innovative changes in regulations to make the students industry ready and globally competitive. He has won several awards, including Young Metallurgist Award by Indian Institute of Metals, Young Engineer Award by Indian National Academy of Engineers, Shiksha Bharati Puruskar Award, Mother Teresa Excellence Award, etc. His vision is to implement new strategies and directions in higher education to strengthen the intellectual capacity of our nation. We are honored by your presence amidst us. Our third panelist is Professor Nishi Pandey, who is serving as the Professor, Department of English and Modern European Languages, Coordinator, Center for Cultural Texts, Records and Translation of Indian Literatures, Director, International Collaborations. Professor Pandey has to her credit 35 years of teaching at graduate and postgraduate level, out of which 32 years has been with supervision work at research level and 30 years of administrative work. Her areas of specialization are higher education management, quality assurance, teacher preparation, and pedagogy. Action research in higher education and setting up of first inter-department center of the university for advanced research in humanities. Professor Pandey is the proud recipient of 2 state, 20 national and 1 international award and 5 international scholarships. Professor Pandey has comprehensive knowledge of administrative, financial, and academic management and has been associated with policy-making decisions at University of Lucknow. As an educationist and committed social worker, she has deep-seated interest and has worked relentlessly for the underprivileged and marginalized, especially the girl child, and for empowerment of women. With her interest in visual and performing arts, she has contributed immensely to the intellectual and cultural life at Lucknow. We are fortunate to welcome you to this panel discussion, Professor Pandey.
Thank you.
The moderator for today's session is Mrs. Devyani Kapoor. Mrs. Kapoor is an educator, an author, and a thought leader. She is the founder and CEO of Edudevs, the School of Inspired Teaching and Learning. As an ex-principal, she carries over 30 years of experience with her in education sector and has worked with key brands in the educational industry. She is credited with introduction of a number of innovative pedagogical techniques for effective classroom management, quality circle time, lesson planning, experiential learning, and student empowerment techniques. Welcome, Mrs. Kapoor. Everyone who remembers his own education remembers teachers, not methods and techniques. The leader is the heart of the teacher, is the heart of the educational system. I welcome you all to this engaging session on decoding NEP, teacher accountability, the first step towards teacher empowerment, with our eminent panelists in conversation with Mrs. Devyani Kapoor. Over to you, Mrs. Kapoor.
Thank you so much, Meenu ma'am. Today we have an illustrious panel. I welcome all our esteemed panelists, some of whom with whom I've had the opportunity of one-on-one discussions and had an understanding of their educational philosophy and ideology. I welcome all to yet another episode of our web series, Decoding the National Education Policy 2020, a joint venture of Edudevs, School of Inspired Teaching and Learning, and Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham. I must take this opportunity to tell our viewers that our series have become extremely popular and have been applauded across by many state governments who have greatly appreciated the corpus of content churned during these discussions. The National Education Policy 2020 is a robust and a very futuristic document, a powerful document which requires all of us to deliberate on some of the major challenges that we might be facing during its implementation. Today, we are all here to deliberate on teacher accountability, which is one of the first steps towards teacher empowerment. If I do an analysis of all the previous documents, whether it was the Kothari Commission of 1966, on which the National Education Policy of 1968 was based on, or the subsequent policies of 1986 and revamping 1992, or probably the National Education Policy 2020, all talk about teachers being at the hem of the teaching learning process. The policy exhorts that teachers truly shape the future of the nation as they co-create the process of nation building by creating high quality human resources in the form of students in their classrooms. Quality of teachers have been a major cause of worry in the country, and one of the basic prerequisites to improve the quality education, which I think we all agree and understand. Two things form the basic ingredients. One is the competence of the teacher, and the other is motivation, both of which are very, very crucial in improving the quality of teacher education. Several initiatives have been taken from time to time to address the shortages and improving the quality of pre-service teachers, in-service teachers' professional development. Now, at all levels, efforts have been made by center and state governments to address some of the issues which I lay in front of you. Large number of vacancies in both elementary and secondary levels lay vacant. There is problem of untrained teachers. There is a lack of professionalism when it comes to teacher training institutes. There is a mismatch in training and actual classroom practices. As I often say, that young and naive teachers come with their theoretical knowledge and are made to enter directly into the classrooms, and they often succumb to the classroom realities. There are problems like teacher absenteeism, teacher accountability. All this will be dealt in today's webinar. However, first things first, let us first talk about teacher accountability. We open our first ice-breaking session today with the first question that will be addressed. The same question will be addressed to all our three panelists in sequence of Ms. Geeta Gandhi Kingdon, Ms. Nishi Pandey, and Dr. P Shankar. I would request all our panelists to please adhere to a time limit of 2 to 3 minutes. Over to you, the panelists, for the question. Accountability is, we see, the new normal addition to the vocabulary of, public education. The word has ever since been in, corporate sector and other industries. But in public education, this word is now holding importance last, say, 2 decades. It is used by school administrators, teacher institutions, classroom teachers, and by parents. It is time that we educators need to be drawn to the concept of being accountable to our profession. But foremost, what are teachers accountable for? The reality is, are they only accountable for the results, that is in digits, that they bring to the schools, or the accolades in terms of awards that they bring to the school, or they are accountable to the deeper and more intense developments in education? Are they accountable to the crisis that we face in the society? So my first, the question is being addressed to Ms. Gandhi. What is your take on teacher accountability? Over to you, Ms. Gandhi.
Thank you, Ms. Kapoor. It's very good to be on this forum, and the topic of accountability is very close to my heart Reason being that my perception is, and I've been a researcher in the field of education for maybe, about 27, 28 years post my PhD, which was on economics of education. And my work has been mostly on India, education in India, school education particularly, but I've also had a lot of PhD students who've done their doctoral theses on many other developing countries, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, South Africa, and so on. So teacher accountability, it seems to me, is the elephant in the room. Or rather, I would not single out only teachers, because teachers are not in isolation. Is the big elephant in the room. And my own view is that the national education policy, although it's an extremely enlightened document and I have a lot of time for it, it's a wonderful document, very progressive, and it's extremely well thought out. However, I think it misses out this particular thing, which I think is the elephant in the room. It hasn't got any big ticket reforms that have the potential to fix the accountability, which I think is at the heart of the problem of school education. See, first of all, we know that outcomes will be good. Outcomes can be broadly defined. You can define them narrowly in terms of school outcomes, learning among the the many of the private schools and the elite private schools, outcomes are defined more widely, and that's proper, and it's as it should be throughout the system. Outcomes should not be narrowly focused only on the learning outcome. At any rate, howsoever you define the outcomes are going to be better the higher the effort by the system stakeholders, whether it's teachers, principals, whether it's educational administrators. How do we know whether the effort is low and the accountability is low? We know that because the outcomes are poor. We can see learning achievement surveys of children, we see the outcomes are poor. We look at teacher effort measures. For example, when we look at, for instance, teachers' absence rates, which is a measure of teacher effort, right? That's a measurable aspect of teacher effort. There's loads of aspects of teacher effort which are not necessarily objectively measurable, but one that is teacher absence rate. And we see that teacher absence rates are extremely high. In some states in India, in Jharkhand, get to the school. On an unannounced visit, 45% of the teachers are absent. In Uttar Pradesh, it's 31.2%. Nationally, it is of the order of 24.6%. This is a World Bank survey. These surveys are not done every year. That which is uncomfortable, we're not measuring it. Teacher effort ought to be an important thing that we do monitor, but there isn't an annual survey. So, we are afraid to even measure it because we know that there is a real problem there. Anyway, so that's just for starters. Now look at the outcomes in terms of, for example, board exams. We know that there is regular cheating, and we know that the system is compromised because even the politicians are using the examination system as a kind of a political football. I don't want to name the political parties, but I have a table which, if you want me to share it, if you allow me, screen sharing, can I just screen share that one table? Okay.
Yes, please.
So I have this table that I will share with you. First of all, if you look at the percentage of teachers, see, the constitution of our country gives teachers a politically privileged position in the sense that as per section, Article 1713C of the Constitution of India, 1/12 of the membership of the upper house of the state legislature must be made up of people whose profession is teaching, right? So what has been the impact of that? I've got the an average over this, post-independence period, nearly 17% of the membership of the upper house of the Uttar Pradesh legislature is made up of individuals whose occupation is teaching, which is a massive overrepresentation. So teachers are heavily politicized. They are very active participants in politics because the constitution grants them that. No other group of publicly paid servants are singled out for this privilege. Aided school teachers can contest these elections. Now, that was not the table I wanted to show you. The one that I want to show you is to do with this one. So here, I hope you can see this, that this is showing the pass rate in the Uttar Pradesh high school board examination in every year from the year 1988 to the year 2018. And what we see here is that, in 1992, the then BJP government brought in an anti-cheating rule. And as part of that rule, if you look at this, so this is regular people who sit the exam as regular candidates. This is those who don't go to school, but register for the exam so-called privately. This is not private school. This is those who register for a board exam to take it privately. And this is the total, regular candidates and private candidates is the total. And what we see is that in 1992, what we see is that the pass rate in the high school board exam in the 4 years before, the pass rate was of the order of about 45 to 55%. Okay. And then in the year in which they announced that the year before, when they announced that the next year the exam is going to be, that there will be police put at all examination centers, you can see that the pass rate fell from 57% to only 14.7%. And that's when the bar for passing the exam is set so low that you only need to get 33% marks, in order to pass. Even then, only less than 15% of those who took the high school board exam that year could actually pass it without the aid of cheating. Now, what happens is we see that 5 years later, the pass rate is again roughly of the, and again in the BJP government, 40.2% has gone back up, about 48% in, under the BSP government in 1997. Under the SP government, it shoots up in 2007 to 74%, then down to 40% next time, up to 86.6% under SP, again under SP, 87.7%, and crashing back down to 75%, in 2018. So what I'm trying to illustrate is that it is being used. So we cannot blame only the teachers, but the point is that the system level accountability is compromised because, for one thing, teachers have been given a politically privileged position in our constitution, which has meant that they have become proactive, in the political arena. And, and this issue, by the way, has been taken up many times by the CAPE committee, for example, the Central Advisory Board on Education. Okay, that's the highest advisory body on education. It's been taken up in courts, but they have agreed, they have not been able to change this provision of the constitution that teachers have this political position. And that's part of the reason why they're able to get away with impunity, with not being, with being chronically absentee and not having very many, how shall I say, strict, how shall I say, any consequences for being, frequently absentee, chronically absentee, and applying low effort. So this is part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Kingdon, because you've actually, hit the bullseye where you say it is not just the teacher, but somewhere the system is lacking, and which we can see from there is regular cheating and there is a lot of absenteeism, and somewhere the effort by and large from the system. And you rightly said that the policy misses out on this aspect, which we'll definitely come back to. Over to Ms. Pandey. Let's hear you out for your views on what is your take on teacher accountability and how it's to be addressed. Yes, ma'am.
You're muted.
Am I muted? No.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon to Geeta and everyone else on the panel and who are attending. I absolutely agree with Geeta that, and with you, that the national education policy does not address this issue of accountability. But my understanding is that there is so much that needs to be worked upon in terms of infrastructure, in terms of support systems, in terms of what has to be done with others, that the policy really does not, I think, has not touched upon it, because we have to work with the teachers we have. And the policy works, and that is gargantuan task, like it's huge, it's Herculean, to be able to work on accountability with the teachers who are already within the system. So in terms of preparing teachers who are coming into the system new, they have this whole policy of starting you off into a 4-year B.Ed program so that you're trained, or for higher education, giving you a 6-month induction program so that you are trained. So they have begun to work on that. And they have also, like, the shift in the policy is that the teacher in the classroom has to ensure that they are not working on their students on what the student should think, but how the student should think. The shift that, reduction in syllabuses should be done, of course, is there, but that the processes that has to be provided for greater interest and participation of students in the class has to be given by teachers. And it is, they are accountable for this, that they make their, the pedagogy and the methodology for delivering course content through inquiry-based, discovery-based, discussion-based, and analysis-based processes. So if you're looking at accountability of teachers, a lot of it is there. I mean, of course, absenteeism and all that remains, but literally what the National Policy of Education expects is that teachers would be working with students absolutely immediately and directly. So the ones who are there will have to get on with the job immediately. So their accountability on how the learning transaction takes place in the class is something that they need to focus on. And therefore, this whole idea of reskilling, upskilling, and focusing on futuristic technology. And the Prime Minister actually in one of his addresses said that one of the major things that teachers have to understand is that they have to change their mindset towards futuristic technology, and they have to understand that futuristic technology has to be integrated. So he has talked about that. At the same time, if you look at the whole policy, they have focused on teachers and that teachers have to be great learners. And the Prime Minister had said that when a teacher learns, a nation leads. So the focus on teacher preparation and teacher education is, of course, there.
Great.
And also that they are enlightened human beings, and teachers create enlightened human beings. It's they who do. And then he talks also about their, giving them a better status, giving them, they are important, they need to be nurtured, teachers need to be, the dignity of the teacher has to be retained, and talented teachers have to be brought into the system. For that, it will take time. I do not say that accountability of teachers can be reached immediately or even in the next 15, 20 years. It will take time. And I think they need to work on it with the generation that is coming in. So I guess that's where they are positive. So that's why I think.
Very well said, ma'am. Excellent. Very well said that teacher accountability will not come overnight. It has to be imbibed. Over to Dr. Shankar, and I would specifically want to add something here, that you're a principal, and how do you look at your teachers? There are certain teachers who give you X result, number of 90s, and number of awards to your school. Then there are Y set of teachers who actually silently working at the grassroots levels, trying to look at the discipline, trying to look at the school culture, trying to create. So as a principal, I want to take your viewpoint on teacher accountability, your personal view on that. Yes, Dr. Shankar.
Thank you, Mrs. Devyani. We have heard some very interesting discussions from Ms. Geeta and Ms. Nishi. My personal take on this is I would prefer to call it as teacher responsibility, and accountability flows with that. Though they are go in parallel, but I would rather prefer to call it a responsibility, then it becomes a kind of a personal attitude of the teacher. Um, Before I answered your question directly about how we address this issue here, uh, let me take a minute or two to put things in perspective. NEP is about a very student-centric learning, and therefore uh, bundling each student with a unique bouquet of skills and attributes. Having said that, it is only possible if each teacher gives singular attention to each student, tries to understand their ambitions, tries to provide them the platform to learn the skills that needs to go with making that dream come true, motivating them, and keep revisiting their goals and help them to redefine higher bars for themselves. So all this is possible only if there's utmost uh, responsibility and dedication of the teachers. I agree that we are not in a very comfortable position today. We are a long way to go. But well, if we have to realize the bigger vision of our nation, then all of us have to participate in this. We've been talking about this, a collective social responsibility, and without that, it's definitely not possible. The way we do it at our institutions is we lay out a very clear expectations from each faculty. It's not going to be definitely the same uh, expectation for all the faculty, because at an from an administrative skill, we know the 360-degree requirement for an institution and the kind of outcome, which is not definitely not limited to the marks and the result percentage. There's much more that goes with that. And so the first thing that we do is we set very clear goals for each faculty, and we try to assess and evaluate what we call as the appraisals at the end of the year. Basically, we are not going to give them surprises, but trying to map and help them realize how they have been able to meet the targets. The targets will be in measuring 360-degree student outcomes. Of course, academic outcome is important, but more important is the uh, skill learning, the attributes, the ethics, and all that. Teachers, yeah, if you look back in Sanskrit, we have been called Adhyapa, Guru, and definitely they have not thought about teachers as only information transmitters. I think we all have that responsibility to mold them into wonderful citizens and professionals. And I would say that it's more the teacher responsibility that has to be inculcated today, and accountability will flow automatically once that responsibility is accepted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shankar, and very well said that accountability will automatically fall in place once we empower them, we infuse the sense of responsibility in them. And so we had very three good points coming out of this section where Professor Gandhi talked about the role of the entire management and not just the responsibility of the educators to deal with concepts, problems like teacher absenteeism, ad hocism, cheating, etc. Where Ms. Nishi Pandey said that accountability is something we should not expect overnight. It will take time. And the final, but the last but not the least, is Dr. Shankar's argument, where he says that it is the responsibility that we need to focus on, and accountability will automatically fall. Moving on to our next segment, which is the two questions will be addressed to each panelist. The one is, the first one, again in the same order, my question to Professor Geeta Gandhi. Professor Gandhi, you being the president of one of the largest chain of schools, I mean, which is, Meenu ma'am just said, it is going to enter the Herculean, the big, chunk of segment that you're dealing with and catering to is soon going to enter the Guinness Book of World Record as well. Now, this question is especially addressed to you, that elementary teachers are vital to the society, given that they help format and teach the building blocks of an education. And it's not easy to teach the basic reading, writing, arithmetic skills. It takes a lot of patience. Now, the scenario across our country is, of course, I'm not talking about West, where it is differently addressed. We see that elementary teachers are somewhere seen, treated, kept at as second grade, in terms of salaries, in terms of induction and orientation programs, in terms of skill development, empowerment. Do you think, a very radical situation, do you think that the elementary teachers' pay scale could be much higher or better than the secondary and senior secondary teachers, so that we do not face this scenario of vacant positions lying in our elementary and primary schools? And would you agree to it? And do you think that is doable in a country like India? Yes, Ms. Gandhi.
Okay, so
you're muted.
That I'll comment on. Yeah, you've said two things that I want to comment on. One is that there are there are things, teachers' posts lying vacant, and I want to address that. And the second thing you asked about is salaries, teacher salaries. Now, let me just talk about teacher vacancies. I've just completed a paper which concurs with the Ministry of Human Resource Development's estimate, which the HRD minister has cited in Parliament in response to a parliamentary question, whereby the question asked by some MP in Parliament was, what is the number, will the HRD minister tell us what is the number of teacher vacancies in public schools in the country? And the answer that came 1 million teacher vacancies, 10 lakh teacher vacancies. Now that number was cited in the new national education policy, saying that the MHRD figures show that there are 1 million teachers, teacher vacancies in the country. And it says that the teacher vacancies will be urgently filled. And the draft National Education Policy 2019 in its appendix, which is a 464-page document, in its appendix, it gives an estimate of how much it will cost to appoint these 10 lakh teachers. I've just completed a paper this month, or at the end of last month, which is going to come out shortly as a discussion paper, in which I examine this question. The reason why I examine this question as to teacher vacancies is because if you look at published DICE data, District Information System on Education, DICE data And in this data, I am able to confirm by looking at all the states schools, there are teacher vacancies. And that is very much the case. And it is the truth. But in other schools, there are teacher surpluses. So nobody has ever made, to my knowledge, an estimate of the number of teachers that are surplus, because it's all in relation to the Right to Education Act's teacher allocation norms. So we are uncritically accepting the figures that MHRD is putting out of how many teacher vacancies there are, although they are correct. But it does not take into account the fact that in the same state, often in the same district, there are many schools that have teacher surpluses, many schools that have teacher deficits. So it's a question sometimes of redeploying teachers from the surplus schools to the deficit schools. And basically, that's point number one. So when I do that, I find that the number of surplus teachers in the country is very nearly the same as the number of teacher vacancies. So net teacher vacancies is only 26,000 as against 9 lakh, right? So that's point number one. Point number two is that, everybody knows that, student enrollment numbers are inflated when schools, fill in this form and send it for DICE data, DICE data capture format. When they send it to the government, they are over-reporting the numbers because there are so many incentives that are tied with over-reporting numbers. The midday meals that you get would be greater, the grains for the midday meals would be greater. The amount of uniforms you get, cloth for uniforms, all the number of shoes and bags and a whole range of things, sweaters, all of that will be greater if you report a higher number. So you don't have to take my word for it. You look at what the Midday Meal Authority has estimated. You look at what the Comptroller and Auditor General of India in its reports has reported. And yet we're working, when we want to estimate how many teachers are needed in a given school, we're still taking the data from the uncritically accepting the inflated self-reported enrollment data. So what we need is research that yields accurate estimates, which is what the CAG is also saying, the Comptroller and Auditor General is study. I find that instead of a 26,000, let alone a 9 lakh teacher vacancies, not even 26,000 teacher vacancies when you allow for teacher surplus schools and redeployment. In fact, there's a teacher surplus of 3,41,000 teachers when you take the fake enrollments into account, So anyway, one can go into the detail of that. But the point is that for one thing, it seems a very big myth that there is a teacher vacancies. The truth is that yes, there is a teacher vacancy, but it's because you've got surplus teachers, and it's also again part of the whole political economy of the school education sector that is so mismanaged, so misgoverned, that where you've got surplus teachers, you're not able to shift them to the schools where there's a teacher deficit. So that's one aspect of the governance of the education sector. So the second point of yours was about salaries. Now here, I would like to illustrate, if you will permit me to share my screen. I want to show one table, and that is, let me just go to that.
Vijayata, is ma'am able to share the screen? Because last time I couldn't see. Just see that she's able to.
Okay, so here's the, are you able to see my screen? Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, so now you can see it in slightly bigger. This is the starting salary of primary teachers in public schools in Uttar Pradesh. These are regular teachers in government schools. And this is in various years. So, and this column, the penultimate column, which says total pay per month, this is the one that I'm focusing on. So you see, 2008 was the year immediately before the 6th Pay Commission, right? And at that time, the starting salary of a government school teacher, if you take basic pay into account, dearness allowance or DA, and house rent allowance, and there was no per month. 2009, the 6th Pay Commission was implemented, and the starting salary went up from about 10,500 to about nearly 19,000. It was a very substantial increase in one single year. And, there was a justification given in the 6th Pay Commission as to why they were massively increasing the salaries of teachers. They wanted to attract good candidates. Then you see that 2010, 2011, 20, and go on. And this 2017 was the year of the 7th Pay Commission. And there you see it went up from 33,430 in the year before to about 38,500 in the next year. And this is the salary escalation in the year 2019, which is the latest for which I have data. It was 44,408 rupees. This is the starting salary on day one for a teacher, whether it's in rural Uttar Pradesh or in urban Uttar Pradesh. Okay. And this is primary, class 1 to 5 teacher. We're not talking about junior teacher, because junior teacher starting salary in 2019 was about 60,000 rupees, day one, 60,000. Now, what's interesting is this last 3 rows that I've got here, annual salary growth rate. From 2008 to 2017, that means from just before, from the last year of the 5th pay commission to the first year of the 7th pay commission, if you were to see it salary increase, the starting salary of a primary school teacher in government schools increased by nearly 16% per annum. This is the annual compound rate of growth. And if you look at, various different years, 2008 to 2019, it's about 14%. If you forget about the year before the 6th pay commission, you start from the, after the 6th pay commission was implemented in 2009, if you start from that, then it is 8.5 and go only up to the year before the start of the 7th pay commission. Then within the 6th pay commission year, from the first year of the 6th pay commission to the last year of the 6th pay commission, the salary escalation was 8.5% per annum. So I hope that helps to answer your question. That salaries, and one thing I should have done is to have shown that, okay, so we say that, okay, this is the salary levels. How do we, can we say that this is high or this is low? Well, we can, because, we can do the following. Sorry, just one moment.
I just have one, and I, want to drive you to another fact that these are the pay scales and structures of the government. But when we look around the common, and that private schools are a big players in the market in this, so we see that these teachers, the elementary, the primary teachers, they are often hired at anywhere between it's 12 or a 14 or a 16 and go up to 22,000. And they are often at contractual basis. And that is a very big segment and a chunk of educators which are contributing to so that is something also we need to, kind of look.
Very and important. Yeah, very important point. Whole, not just in the teacher labor market. What I mean by that is the segmentation of the labor market means that you see the wages, the wage rate for any group of workers, not just the teachers. If you look at the market, the private sector schools are operating in the market. So what do they need? They need somebody who has probably a BA degree at the very least. And a lot of schools don't really insist that the person at the primary level has a B.Ed degree, right? So what is the wage that a person with a BA degree or equivalent, like BSc or whatever, like Lucknow or a village like Banthara or anything like that, can afford? I'll give you an example of Punjab. There was a study by CCS in the year 2014, and it showed that it was a study done in 2 districts of Punjab, Mansa and I think Batla. 1,900 rupees per month. And in the same village, the government schools teachers' starting salary was 60,000 rupees per month. Yes. So here is a private school teacher's salary is roughly 2,000 rupees per month. In the same village, the starting salary of a government school teacher, primary teacher here, we're not talking about a junior teacher, was 60,000. That means 30 times. So why is that? Why is it possible? The reason why it's possible is because in the private sector, the wage is the price of labor. It is determined by the forces of demand and supply. Because there's such a supply of people who have BA degrees and they don't have jobs. There is graduate unemployment in India, according to NSS survey, National Sample Survey, is 10.5%. 10.5% of our graduates are unemployed. So people are available in the local labor market who have a BA degree, who are willing and able to work at those low wages. That's why these schools can get away with paying low wages, market clearing wages, whereas the government's wage is the high minimum wage that is bureaucratically set. And that's the reason why they're able to do it. And if you want to see the extent of the difference, if you just compare how teacher salaries compare with those in other countries, this is a table taken from Jean Drèze and Amartya Sen's book. Amartya Sen is the Nobel Prize.
Yes.
Edudevs have written this book called An Uncertain Glory, India and Its Contradictions, in the year 2013. And in that, chapter 5 is on education. And this table is taken from chapter 5 and reproduced here. Now, this shows the salary of a teacher in India, government school teacher in India, as a multiple of the state's per capita GDP, the state's per capita income. So we see here that if you look at this row here,
yeah, no, we do understand this. I just wanted to kind of draw this attention that we are though talking and looking at the government pay scales and all, but a major contribution to the system is made by the private sector.
That is true. Absolutely.
That is, yeah. So that is, thank you so much.
Just one thing I just, if you allow, I want to point out. If you just look at this, this is 9 Indian states in the year 2004-05. In the year 2004-05, in these 9 Indian states, you see this figure 4.9. This is teacher salary, regular government teacher's salary as a multiple of the state's per capita income. That means a teacher is paid roughly 5 times the per capita income of the state. And if you look at particular states like Uttar Pradesh, it is 15.4 times the per capita. What a teacher gets paid is about 15 times the per capita income of the, in Bihar, it is 17.5, in Chhattisgarh, 7.8, and in 6 Indian states in 2014, it is 8.7, right? So this last one is, I have added it myself because this is based on data by Vimala Ramchandran from NUPA. It's a NUPA study on 9 states, which has data on teacher salaries from 6 states. My point is this: compare these numbers with these numbers for China, where the teachers are paid roughly the same as the per capita income of the country, right? If it had been 1 instead of 0.9, it would have been the teacher salary is equal to the per capita income. In Indonesia, teacher salary is half of the per capita income. In Japan, it's 1.5 times the per capita income of the country. In Bangladesh, 1, and Pakistan 2. But in India, it is very much higher. That means teachers are paid very well in relation to the average person in the state or in the country in India compared to other countries.
Right.
So in other words, they have every reason to be, to be accountable because they are being paid relatively well.
Right. And I think I'm very tempted to do an analysis, a comparative analysis of the private sector, maybe post the webinar and have some discussions with you on the comparative analysis of the private sector as compared to the government pay scales. My next question is to Professor Nishi Pandey. Ma'am, you see the various policy documents, all of them unanimously acknowledge the power of one. That is, teacher of all the different factors which influence the quality education for the national development and the quality, competence and character of teachers are undoubtedly the most significant. Now, while this whole idea of empowered teacher has a lot of potential to move mountains, we realize that an empowered teacher is the road to quality education and further to nation building. But the reality says something else. So I want to quote here Justice J.F. Verma Committee report of 2012, which says a broken teacher education sector is putting over about 370 million children at risk. And that is in 2012 they are talking about. And whereas parallelly, we see that teacher education institutes are mushrooming like on every nook and corner. Some of them may be opening in 1-room apartments as well, where they give a 99% pass rate to them. The same teacher, when they took the Central Teacher Eligibility Test, CTET, 85% of them were unable to qualify this test.
94% in the first CTET, the first Central TET, Teacher Eligibility Test. The pass rate was 6%. And that was the highest in the country. State teacher eligibility tests performances were miserable. Typically
Miserable.
below 3 point, the highest next to the CTET was 3.7%. Most of the other states is about 2.2%, 2.4% of teachers passing who took the exam.
Imagine,
Bihar, 26 lakh teachers took the test, and the pass rate was
right.
only, I remember, 2.3% or something like that.
Yeah. So the sorry figures that we are, looking at. Now, my question to you, that national education policy has given a very, very lofty roadmap in this direction, and they are putting the NCFT, they are putting up a nice structure to it. What is your take on transforming the position and treatment of teachers in education system as envisaged by national education policy, and how much time will it take and what energies? I just want to hear your thoughts out, Professor Pandey, that how will this Herculean task happen where we have reality speaking something very different?
So I've got a long experience of training teachers in higher education. For almost 12 to 14 years, I've worked in that, because earlier there was no way that they were training teachers in higher education for anything. So it began with 4 weeks, and it was years and years of effort on our part to give feedback to the HRD ministry that you need to be giving them more training. So a person coming into higher education needs to know child psychology, educational philosophy. They need to be trained in so many other things. So I think cognizance has been taken of that and feedback over the years. Therefore, now they have 6 months, a minimum 6-month induction program for all teachers entering higher education. Now, when we talk of primary and secondary education, they have looked at how they can make it more, what should we say? How should they make it more focused on working at the teacher themselves? Just to give you the 4-year program. And it's the 4-year program is after class 12. The student needs to decide whether they want to go into teaching as a profession. So they will take a BA, B.Ed degree, or a BSc B.Ed, or a BCom B.Ed. My understanding is that once this comes into effect, it will definitely impact the way teacher education is taken forward in the country. Then people existing in one room, colleges and stuff will not be able to operate, because they will be required to be, it's not just a B.Ed degree that you can get in any one room or in 2 rooms or 4 rooms. So my understanding is that the introduction of the 4-year B.Ed program is a progressive thing. Another thing that the national policy, and it will work on the quality of the teacher. The second thing was that if you've read the policy, it says that for primary teachers, they may not require that they should do a BA. There is a proposal that there could be a class 12 student who wants to go into primary teaching, may take a course in child psychology, in classroom management, pedagogy, and may be allowed to teach the primary sections. Now, when you do that, I think it opens up possibilities at a different level altogether, because then what happens is that this huge rush for getting to do a BA degree or an MA degree and then just taking an LT or something and coming in, that will be drawn away. So as of now, what is happening is, you all talked about the performance of teachers in state eligibility tests. It will happen. We are looking at the B.Ed programs. So many colleges in higher education are offering the B.Ed program, and they do not even have adequate teachers. When we go for affiliation of a B.Ed course, we are shocked at the minimum facilities that there are. Now, inbuilt here is this basic, this basic aspect of corruption. There's such deep-rooted corruption in the process of granting affiliation, or granting them. So it's done by the government, it's done by universities, it's done by bodies which have bureaucrats and other people in place, or they have teachers from the higher education sector. So basically, how do we deal with something like, people giving money and getting things done? So corruption is at the root of a lot of what we are experiencing and what you people were talking about. But it's my understanding that I know that what has happened has happened. But when the 4-year program comes into force, you cannot be just an education faculty college. You'll have to be a multidisciplinary college. That's also something that has come in. No college will now just be just an education faculty, Falana College of Education. No longer. You'll have to have a BA program. So you have to have, when you have multiple disciplines coming in, or there will be cluster formations of different colleges, I believe that things will move and the quality of the teachers would be better. I believe.
Very well said, ma'am. And I actually think that strict and stringent rules should be created, and these private colleges should not get, certification and affiliation so easily, because that is somewhere there was last 10 to 15 or maybe 20 years, like 2 decades, suddenly there has been such a rise in these private teacher education institutes, which somewhere has liquidated the whole idea of an empowered teacher. That is what my personal take, and I completely resonate with what you are saying.
What I think is that the minute you make it multidisciplinary or an institution, they will be compelled to do it. And if they are not able to do it, they will either shut down. The other thing is that, I think that universities will have to think about more stringent affiliation rules. And for that, those processes will definitely get put into place, because I do go for affiliation purposes. And I just think maybe 10 days back, I was the vice chancellor's nominee at a college where I actually did write that they do not have these facilities and they should not be given an affiliation. So there are vice chancellors who come and say that you can be firm and strict and say no. But then that is also, it will again, I say, take a little bit of time, because to shut down all of those which are already there and working, more monitoring, closer monitoring and consistent monitoring of these educational institutions, which are teacher training institutions, will have to be done. And this is in the higher education sector. So it has to, when we talk of the seamless way in which primary, secondary and higher education should work together, I think only after that becomes functional can we really implement this in a manner where, it gives us quality teachers.
Well
said, for chairman of the NCTE, the National Council for Teacher Education, who it was alleged had been giving out these accreditations to private colleges, private teacher training colleges like Sweeties, and without proper checks and balances. And it was alleged that he had done it in return for, basically had done corruption. So he had to step down. There was one person who I shall not name. And then, then subsequently some of the other NCTE chairmen, for example, Santosh Mathew, I was in his office, and he was talking about a very technological approach, a technocratic approach to trying to basically monitor in a technological way. So at the moment, all these teacher training colleges, they have to fill in a self-declaration that we have this, 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 and this. And when they fill that in, they're meant to put that on a website, which is a publicly accessible document, that they're saying, they're self-declaring that we have these facilities, we have these faculties, et cetera, and so it is verifiable by anybody, and if they find, they can complain and so on. So they're trying to take a technological approach to the monitoring. I'm not sure how successful that is at the moment, but absolutely what Nishi has just said, that the fact that the new education policy says that these will not be able to operate as standalone sort of teacher training colleges. It has to be basically as part of a university, which is a multidisciplinary setting. That will definitely help, I think.
I think that is one thing where we all commonly resonate.
There's just one more point. Another point I want to make is when NCTE and AICTE and UGC, everything will come under one umbrella. And only the law universities and the medical universities will be different. We hope to see a little more, uniformity and a little more accountability coming in. And, there will be lesser regulations, and regulations can be implemented. I hope that overarching higher education foundation will be able to work this out, number one. Number two, they are separating the NAC and other accreditation bodies from the framework and making them independent, which will then become better. and they can talk of school accreditation also through these neutral bodies which are not part of NCTE or AICTE or the UGC. So maybe that will help.
Very rightly said, ma'am. Very rightly. This is the need of the hour, and I'm sure with people like you and Ms. Gandhi, things will start moving in positive direction.
And may I just add one sentence? I know you want to go to the next speaker, and we must, but just wanted to say something on what you just picking up on that. See, this point that Nishi just made, the last point, it's easily, to me, the most important point, because this separation of Directorate of Basic Education in every state is both the operator of public schools and the monitor of public schools and the assessor of children's learning outcomes and any other things in public schools. Everything is concentrated in that one entity. So how can, if you are yourself responsible for making sure that the quality is good, when you assess that quality, you are yourself assessing the quality, it goes against every principle of management. That's why TRI was set up to be a regulator for the telecoms industry, an independent, autonomous, body that is meant to look at it. So in the same way, it's now proposed that the school education sector, there's also a state schools standards authority, which will look at that. It will be a dispassionate, neutral body that will, it is not, then the director of basic education can do the task that it has been charged with, which is to run basic schools, to run public schools and to run them well. No longer will it also be the assessor of its own schools. Otherwise, what we see, they're giving themselves really good marks. All the children are doing really well. Whereas when an independent agency comes and tests those same children, you find that the learning levels are really pitiably low. So, they're giving, so this separation of powers that is inherent in the new education policy will be very good if it is implemented in the intended fashion. That's the big if.
Yes. Very true and very rightly said. And I really hope we are able to address this big if. Moving on to Dr. Shankar, which is a very related question where from the discussion we've just ended, we all do realize that there is this one common factor, which is an empowered teacher, which ultimately we see will turn the tide and lead our education system from the current morasses of aimlessness, inflexibility, to become a very progressive, flexible, multidisciplinary, technology and skill-focused system. Now, that will have the capability to produce competent, creative, skilled educators. Now, this common factor is the educator, and we also realize the need to empower them is immense. We've seen various statistics and data that have been, displayed and discussed during the course of our discussion. Now, what are those very simple, workable solutions to address the gamut of issues in teacher education in the school sector? Like maybe a 4 or a 5 things that you would let us know that if we follow these 4 or 5 things, things will start changing. Yes, Dr. Shankar.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ms. Devyani. I've been listening to some wonderful discussions by the fellow panelists. I would say it's really eye-opening discussions. Yes, we are faced with a whole gamut of challenges. We'll have to accept that and go forward. The first thing for me is to embrace technology, because going towards education 4.0 and thereafter to adapting to technology is going to be the only key to ensure all that we have envisioned. And for that, how we will be able to train our educators, how they will become comfortable to use these technologies in their daily pedagogies in the delivery system. That's going to be a very important task. Setting up of national and regional platforms where the educators can be trained hands-on on some of the most advanced technologies and pedagogies that will have to go with this student-centric approach. Now that's going to be one. Second, the more difficult and what we have already been talking is for all this to happen, if we have to uh, give to our nation a very skilled human resource with high ethical and value component, creative component. Uh, it's very important that we have very highly motivated and dedicated personnel in this educational sector. We do have a good number. I should appreciate we see a lot of good work happening, but that would still be, I don't have the exact statistics, probably Geeta would be able to tell us, but maybe 20-30% is a very reasonable estimate, I would say. So we should begin with uh, uh, providing them that extra leverage, the recognition, and set a very healthy competition. I think that's going to be the way forward. And the realization that we are not doing a small task, teaching a set of students in a school, that's how it would look like. But somewhere subtly, we are all as teachers uh, having a key responsibility in nation building. If that sense of responsibility is driven, I think it would make a huge difference. All of us are intrinsically capable to deliver. It's just that motivation and dedication levels, if that can be kind of kindled at micro levels, I think there'll be magic here. And so one is about adapting to technologies. Second is motivating. And for that, if some salary revisions is essential, yes, we have been talking about empowering teachers, absolutely essential. There is no way forward. The teachers have to be fully empowered to create a societal transformation. But we should also realize that when we are talking about empowerment, unless you empower the right people, it's going to be more disastrous. So you will have to attract the best brains into the teaching fraternity, and then kind of give them the freedom to and empower them. I think that's what is the key challenge. Uh, well, we'll have to have a separate session on how we are going to tackle these problems. It's not going to be easy. I know we have very
Yeah.
experienced people here and a lot of statistics, a lot of experience. That's, I think, a topic for a separate discussion. But yes, these are challenges we have to work on.
Thank you, sir. I would quickly go to Professor Gandhi. Once again to you. Number one, why have now since 94 or maybe before that, we've been talking about teacher empowerment. First time was 94, and we've been training programs. Why have the existing teacher training programs failed to bring about the improvements in the quality of teaching learning? Even though the governments have been sanctioning enough funds, there have been efforts by private actors, there have been various initiatives which have, tried to pitch in this idea of an empowered teacher time and again. To one, why they have failed, and two, I would also would like you to expand on some points on what are those 2-3 workable solutions that you would like to provide. Yes, Professor.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to just very briefly comment on what Mr. Shankar was saying. I so agree with him that it really goes to the heart of the whole enterprise. That is so important. And the real question is, the billion or multi-billion dollar question is, how do we get the teacher intrinsically motivated? That is the big, big thing. And I believe that schools that do well are those that somehow make the teacher have self-belief that they can do wonders, that they can do, that they are such people of such capacity, that they can make a difference, such a massive difference to the outcomes for their children, which will be lifelong, enduring changes for the better, for in the lives of the hundreds of children that they would teach, in each year, perhaps. So I think that that's very important. Now, going on to your point, I'm not really an expert on this, so which typically means that I don't have data on it. Uh, having said having said that, because I don't really like to opine on things on which I don't really have expertise. But having said that, as somebody who's more lately become a practitioner, in the sense that I'm first and foremost an academic, I'm a university professor, I'm a researcher. But now, having been a practitioner also for 10 years, not that I'm in the classroom, really, this question should be asked of people like Dr. Shankar, who'd be so much more better qualified than me to talk about it. And people like Nishi, because she's teaching, university students at the moment. I teach university students. So, at that level, I can talk. Now, but I will make this one comment, and that is that I believe that the reason why teacher training has not been so effective as one might hope for, because there certainly has been a lot of effort. There's been a lot of institutions to do teacher training. There's been money in it as well. There's meant to be 21 days of in-service teacher training by the government. The government pays for it every year for the whole of the, all the elementary school teachers. So why is it that despite all this effort and time and money, it's not yielded the results? And I believe that an important part of the reason must be that the teacher training, the content of teacher training is very theoretical. It's not in class coaching. If there were the teacher trainee was going to class, and there was a coach going to observe her, give her micro level comments, feedback, affirming and motivating, supportive comments, and then going back, that teacher trainee going back and the whole system was invested in it, I believe teachers would take it seriously and it would be good. And I think that it also needs to be the case that those who have gone through such a system are rewarded properly. It should not be that everybody, gets the same reward. So these are some thoughts.
Right. And I do feel that, again, I completely resonate with what Dr. Shankar said, that we need to get teachers intrinsically motivated to the profession, that for them, teaching has to be beyond the call of their duty and not just a mechanism of work-life balance. Related question to Professor Nishi Pandey. Ma'am, it's a very related question and a build upon on what the discussion is actually happening. Now, the policy focuses prominently on two issues. One is the status of the teacher in the system and in the society, something we've been debating and we've been discussing in our various episodes as well. Second is testing of the teacher's professional capacity. Now, here is what even Professor Gandhi said, that, there are these workshops, there are these things, but nothing actually within the classroom is happening, and nothing is which then is also assessing them. So a workshop or happens and then it just goes somewhere, but there is no feedback, there is no revisiting of the concept. So is there any correlation between these two, the status of teacher in the system and society, and also, the testing of the teacher's professional capacity? Because then there are one segment of teachers who are completely passionate about their, profession, into, aspects of understanding the profession, going beyond just and then there is a set of educators, which is a very, very big set of educators, which is there, transacting same curriculum time and again, and that is it. So how would you, look at these two parameters? Yes, ma'am.
Nishi, you are muted.
Sorry. So let's talk of the status of teachers. In India, like Professor Shankar was saying, Dr. Shankar was saying that teachers have been considered as gurus and they've been sikshak, etc., etc. And Sanskrit mein bahut shlok hai where you talk about the kinds of teachers there are. And so teachers have always had a very important position, number one. But over time, we've noticed that students have always been encouraged over the years, the past, even in our time, to first go as to become bureaucrats or to become engineers or to become doctors. And those who are not able to get anywhere, they then fall back and say, chalo kuch nahi karenge, so we can teach. So and at that time, the salaries of teachers was not good enough. Now the salaries of teachers are good enough. And yet we feel that the teachers are coming into, people are coming into the teaching profession when they've tried for many years in the IAS or the, wanting to be engineers, they can't do it, they want to do this, that, the other, and this is a backup profession. So where I see the wonderful thing that's happening is, if to become a good lawyer, you have to choose after class 12 that I can go into engineering or medical or into law, good, that they can now say, after class 12, I want to be a teacher. So there will be a huge shift, because better students, those who want to come into the teaching profession, will have to opt for it after class 12. They will have to take it at that point of time. So they have to be motivated enough to come into becoming teachers. I hope that will solve a lot of the issues that we have regarding the kind of people who come in. So now good students who really want to go into the teaching profession will start getting into B.Ed. The 2-year program was helping these who just want it as a backup job. So that will go away, number one. So I imagine that once we've got a motivated bunch, we come to the 4-year program. Now, the Lucknow University, and when I was director of the Academic Staff College, we did a collaborative research project, and a project which was funded by the government of UP, where we developed a 4-year degree program at least 5 years, 6 years back. And in that 4-year program, the way we structured it is, we took our teachers and we were training them, the teachers from BSc, the teachers who are teaching BSc, the teachers who are teaching BA classes. They were taken to California State University, Long Beach, for training programs on how to use innovative and effective pedagogy for delivering course content in the class. So what was happening was that when the student was coming in to study BSc, the teacher was not just teaching him the content for, say, zoology, but was also teaching him how to deliver, how to use an effective pedagogy for delivering the course content. Now, what is going to happen is, when a student does a BSc or a BA degree, they will do, in the first half, they would be studying the subject. And in the second half of the day, they would be working on pedagogy. So when it goes simultaneously, there will be more understanding of how to blend both. The other thing is that what we call practice teaching, the focus will shift to practice teaching. And practice teaching will be introduced much earlier in the syllabus than it was before, because there's going to be focus on actual research. If you're looking at the B.Ed programs, there's a huge overhaul in the B.Ed program, the training. So there will be more practice teaching, and there'll be practice teaching every semester. There will be more research-oriented or action research-oriented work that the students would have to do for those who are training to become teachers. So I believe that their motivation level and their expertise will go up far more. Of course, we have to strictly work on motivation. Somehow, I think the idea of giving teachers a better status in society has to do with the mindset of the people. If in our homes we say, "Are ye to self teacher hai," so the mindset will have to change. I opted to be a teacher in the higher education sector. Everyone said you opted to be a teacher, but it also depends on how motivated you are to make a place for yourself in society. And I think that the mindset will change eventually. Earlier, we thought all and sundry became lawyers. But ever since we've got the CLAT exam, the entrance for CLAT, for people to get in after class 12, the kind of status that the lawyers have experienced is different. And now young girls, a lot of girls, boys are taking a decision in class 12. So they're working in the corporate sector and so many other sectors. It's not just, so the quality of lawyers has gone up. I've noticed over the years that the quality of people coming into law and the legal professions gone up. It will happen for teachers also. The second question was, you talked about was
on the, basically on the professional, which you've already answered, the testing of teachers' professional.
Yeah, okay. So now let's come to testing and for involving them in, you see, teacher preparation is not just one training and it's over. Therefore, upskilling of teachers, therefore, reskilling, or, for them to be understanding that they would have to do, the whole system will have to be a continuous, a continuous process of every 2 years or every 3 years. When there's new technology, all institutions will have to think about what steps they will take. Even government will think about it, I'm sure. So the whole challenge lies for getting quality teachers. For the minute the quality of the teachers increases, the more difficult it becomes for them to become teachers.
Right.
The more people realize that it's not being pushed by corruption, things will change. I believe it will change, and we must have faith that things are going to improve, and that they are trying to put systems in place which will work. So when we look at the 4-year program, the challenge will be in how do you have a more, vibrant and a more what should I call it? I can't get the word. A program that is going to actually focus on preparing them for the classroom.
Yeah,
and the second
more
thing I
robust
think is
program.
also to talk about teacher motivation. We never ever tell the teacher when they're being trained how important they are. It's like a moral science class for them. Somebody comes and talks about the values of a teacher, etc., etc. You've got 200 things, qualities that a teacher must have, patience, this, that. Whenever I've seen the education departments, they talk like that. And I don't think that's how it will work. Because when you want them motivated from within, it's a far more challenging task. It's not about just taking them into a class and teaching them about it. It's also about making sure that it's integrated into the day-to-day training that is taking place. So I think few years down the line, just as for lawyers, just as for engineers and doctors, the minute that you'll watch that there's going to come a national level entrance examination for just as you have CLAT, you'll start having state level examinations or entrance examinations for a BA, B.Ed, BSc, B.Ed, and it will go up because students from class 12 will begin to come in. So I think there should be a change there. And you'll see a change in status.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
We are getting paid as much as any IS officer. As a professor, I know that my salary is equivalent to an additional chief secretary salary. Yeah. But we don't feel accountable. The additional chief secretary sits in his office from morning till evening. And a teacher will want to just come into the class for 2 hours or 3 hours and would like to go away and say we're doing research.
Right.
So we'll have to look at so many other things.
In fact, thank you so much. This discussion is so enriching that we really didn't realize that we've crossed the limit, but I'm so tempted to end where we began from. And honestly, the question that was designed for one of the panelists, now I want to throw it open to all the panelists. This is regarding, and again in the order, same order, Professor Geeta Gandhi Kingdon, then Professor Nishi Pandey, then Dr. P Shankar. Do you think teachers' performance, because we were talking about this, we were talking about what Professor Pandey was talking, exactly this. Do you think teachers' performance assessments are needed to build a culture of accountability? Second, should promotions of teaching faculty be in conjunction with their performance seniority? My second add-on question to this is that who is going to evaluate and assess them? Other ways, should students get the empowerment to assess good teaching and bad teaching? Should it be the parents who should be monitoring? Who should be monitoring them for their accountability? And third, should there, because I remember for so many years, I hardly had any in-service, appraisal exam, which I had to qualify and, get an appraisal. So appraisals were like a walkthrough. Shouldn't there be such kind of examinations which keep continuously testing the upscaling and rescaling, as you said, the knowledge of the educators? Yes. So over to you, Professor Gandhi. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be really brief because I have a different meeting starting at 5:30.
Yes.
And that is that, first of all, it's very good that in the National Education Policy 2020, it talks about merit-based structure of tenure, promotion, and salary with multiple levels within each teacher stage. And I'm reading off the exact wording that incentivizes and recognizes outstanding teachers. So it is merit-based structure of tenure, promotion, and salary. This is the first time that I'm aware of where government document says that, very clearly in a way that, I can understand, merit-based structure of tenure, promotion, and salary with multiple levels within each teacher stage that incentivizes and recognizes outstanding teachers. In other words, promotion is not just based on seniority, number of years that you've worked in the organization. And, at the moment, the teacher who's worked the retires or passes away, it's the one who's the most experienced, next most experienced teacher who becomes the head teacher. So instead of that, it needs to be based on promotion like that needs to be based on merit and on a performance appraisal. So I think that it is enshrined in the NEP. And let us hope, you see, even the National Education Policy in 1986, as revised in 1992, had very enlightened principles. So again, we have some really enlightened things. It's a fantastic policy now that we got in 2020. The real devil is in the implementation. So will it get implemented? Because we have to imagine what the impediments were that, hindered the implementation of the same similarly enlightened provisions of National Education Policy 1986. And why that? Let's go back to the Kothari Commission 1964. Many of its fantastic recommendations are still not implemented. So the point is that it's good that things, we have a time for reflection again. In 2020, we've reflected on it for past 4 years and the new education policies come forth. But we must think about what the impediments to implementation are and how we address those. So I think that is very, very important.
Thank you so much. Very quickly, Professor Pandey, what is your take on this? Very quickly,
so,
just a minute.
When we talk of the teacher assessment, and look at what the UGC did. The UGC has now come up with a system where we are graded and appraisal is done for every single level of promotion. There's a much higher level for us for performance. So we have a CGPA and we have to have a certain number of points before we get promoted to a higher level. And a large number of teachers don't make it to professors, don't make it to other levels. Now that same process needs to be applied for teachers in the primary and the secondary sector. And I think when you have one overarching body, the statutes and the rules would perhaps be the same. Number one. Number two, it can happen in the government schools because in central schools, it is happening. You get promoted and you to become a principal, you take an examination, you have to clear a certain amount of, a certain level. So central schools are evaluating and they are assessing. And they have a system of appraisal where the student feedback is very important. So there's student feedback, there is your self-assessment. Even in higher education, there is student feedback. When NAC comes to accreditation, there is student feedback. There is your own assessment of your own work that you've done. There is an assessment by your own head of department, your dean, and your vice chancellor. So the whole system, including the other stakeholders, have a right to be able to do this. But that needs to be strengthened. And when that is strengthened, then it will work. Now, another important thing for secondary and primary is, which needs to be kept in mind is, it can become applicable for government schools, but the maximum schools are in the private sector. What is the private sector school management going to accept? Are they going to accept the government norms? Are they going to applicate it to themselves? Are they going to promote their teachers that way? That becomes a little problematic. And how that can be negotiated while implementing it is something that, can be regulated through the accreditation process. If they don't have that system in place for promoting their teachers, for incentives for their teachers, then the accreditation could be withheld. So it's a complex kind of thing. It may take a little time, but I'm very confident it will come through and it will have to be done. And it will have to be done by neutral bodies.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Shankar, very quickly. We would like to hear your views. Yes.
Yes, I fully agree with the fellow panelists. If you look at it, in any progressive society, if you have to instill a healthy competition, then merit-based recognition is the only way forward. So that the best people get recognized, the best people get empowered, and that's how the society grows. Now, having said that, while the stakeholders' feedback is important, I would say that there has to be a more intelligent and metric-based evaluation considering the 360-degree requirement.
Feedback.
Yes, because there are multiple things that goes in with the responsibility of the teacher. It's not just about the intellectual feeding. It's not just about the enhancing their emotional intelligence, enhancing their creativity, their the entire 360-degree. And therefore, what's very important, as I mentioned earlier, that setting very clear goals for each teacher for the year ahead, and then trying to have very clear metrics in which the feedback will be one component, will definitely not be the entire thing that will depend, that will test the performance of the faculty or the teacher. So that's, but I would fully agree that merit-based performance recognition and appraisals is the key to instill a very healthy competitive environment.
Absolutely. Yes, very well said. And I too agree that continuous teacher assessment and a 360-degree feedback from all the stakeholders, including her own assessment of herself, will be the way forward. Now, over to you, Meenu ma'am, for the next segment.
Yes, ma'am. We have just about a few questions. There is one by Mr. Mahesh Iyer, who says, why do we have a scarcity of involved teachers? And also, there's another participant who would like to know the parameters for accountability of teachers. Would any of our panelists be willing to take this one? Yes, ma'am. Please.
So when you talk of why do we have less committed teachers, I think the answer lies in the fact that most of them have come there by mistake or as a default, because they haven't really come into the profession, because they love the profession and because they're committed to the profession. They've come to the profession because they want to have a money to feed the family. So depending on what has been your intention for coming in, and it's because of that that you have very few committed teachers. We did a small survey in Lucknow University and its associated colleges about the commitment of teachers and the level of commitment. And we found this, that those who had actually come there, who had come there because they wanted to be teachers and it was their primary aim to be a teacher, were the ones who were rated highest by the students. And the ones who really came there by default are doing any and everything except teach. So they're into politics, they get into jobs. Other than that, they want to be in administration. They want to be doing other things rather than teach. So I think when we have teachers who are coming, when we have people coming in to teach because they are driven by a desire to teach and driven by this whole thing that teaching is what they want to have, then to be doing as a profession, then things will change. number one. The second part of the question was that, sorry, I'm so sorry, I get carried away.
Yeah, ma'am, that is what would be the 4 parameters of accountability for teachers?
See, let me tell you this. When a teacher gets appointed, at least in higher education, and I think the same applies for teachers in primary and secondary. When you get a job as a teacher, you have 5 things to do. Number one, you have to do teaching and teaching. Second is do some kind of research work. Even primary and secondary teachers will now be required to be doing research, because that's going to be a part of your of the curriculum for your student. So if it's there for the student, you will have to continuously learn, upgrade, upskill, get engaged, do action research, do other things. That's the second part. The third thing is evaluation work. You have to contribute towards the evaluation work. Fourth is administration. You have to contribute to the admin. So you're taking attendance, you're doing this and that, taking students out. The administration can give you additional work you're required to do. And the fifth thing that the last education policy said, and the fifth thing that still continues to be there, is extension activities. Extension activities are activities which are connecting the school to society. So whether it's social service clubs or whether it's NSS, NCC or whatever, you need to do that. Now, when you talk of accountability, all these 5 things have to be performed to a certain level of excellence. So you have to give a certain level of commitment to it, or you should be graded at least on how you've contributed to classroom teaching, how have you worked towards, the pedagogies you've used, etc., whether you contribute to administration, whether you contribute to evaluation work. So other than this, there will be multiple other parameters within them. So if you broadly take these 5, within them, there could be multiple smaller parameters which need to be worked out for primary and secondary, in keeping with primary and secondary work processes. For higher education, there is a model in place which has been put there by NAC. And so we go by that. And we find that it helps us to screen out those who are not interested, who are not doing substantial research, whose outputs are bad, and that's being made more stringent each day. So some kind of a mechanism like this will definitely be brought in for primary and secondary level teachers. And I think that will make a difference and have an impact.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was indeed, that has clarified all doubts and in fact given us the insight to work further as involved teachers. Thank you so much. With this, we don't have more questions. Devyani ma'am?
Yeah, we come to the end of this wonderful discussion, a very, very riveting dialogue which we had. And I think the kind of content, as I always say, the corpus of content that has been churned in today's session was amazing. And the kind of contributions which we had from Professor Nishi Pandey, Dr. Shankar, Professor Geeta Gandhi. And at the end, I would just say that take teaching beyond the call of your duty. Let it be a passion-driven profession. And I'm sure this is going to happen. And when you talk about accountability, your accountability should first be to your own self, that why have you chosen teaching as your profession? Are you passionate to teach? What is your aim towards your students? Is it just the marks, the numbers that you aim for, or do you make them lifelong learners? With this, we come to the end of this session, and we are all thankful from bottom of our heart to our panelists who spared so much of time, did their preparation, and graced the panel and enriched us with your thoughts. Thank you so much, Professor Nishi Pandey. Thank you so much, Professor Geeta Gandhi. And thank you so much, Dr. Shankar, for having spared the time.
Thank you, Devyani. Thank you, Devyani. And I really think that if people come into teaching not to earn money and to pursue it as a profession, but they come into it because it's a calling.
Yes.
And it's for service of the nation. When they are motivated by that, things will change. Congratulations.
And thank you so much. And the mindset that teaching should not be just a work-life balance. It is. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.